Hi there, this is Ariel from CC Demon and Slaria, and this is Working with Foam Beginners, Part 2, and this is about tools. So there's just a couple of them. This should be a pretty short video because a lot of them are self-explanatory and you really don't need to know how to operate them. But we'll start with the easy stuff. So let me gather them all up for you guys. So the first thing that you're going to want is obviously something to mark onto the foam. So I always recommend a silver Sharpie or a black one. We work with a lot of black foam, so you don't really see the black markings, so we try and have silver. I advise buying like a 4-pack of these because we always lose ours. The other thing that you'll want is stuff to measure out with. I've got two different kinds of rulers here. One is a clear see-through ruler that is 2 inches by 16 inches. This is really helpful for not only foam work, but for cosplay work in general. Each increment is a 1/16 for the really small marks, and then 1/8 of an inch, and then again goes to 2. Yeah. And then the other one is a 24-inch ruler. It is metal. The important thing about this ruler is it's a cork back, so that way you'll use this a lot to cut straight edges along with your foam, and it's really nice to have the blade run up against because it is metal. And then the cork on the back makes sure that it doesn't move on the foam, because the last thing you want when you're cutting something is for your ruler to move and then you're not cutting a straight line. Which is a great jump into the cutting tools. You can use an X-Acto knife, which is really helpful. Or for bigger pieces, you can use a razor blade, or I suggest having it into a box cutter. However, we have a lot of safety box cutters at our house, which the blade jumps back in once it touches something. It's kind of like, what's the point of having one? So we usually just do loose blades and are very careful. These ones are really good for the thin foam, or the medium foam, or the EVA foam. And then when you're using the pink foam, they sell these little blades, these little saw blades, as well as a matching saw to go with it. This is really good for sawing through the pink foam. It goes through it really quick, and it's fairly clean. For thin foam, you can also use just a pair of scissors. I would make sure they're sharp, and don't try cutting through EVA foam. The medium weight foam you can kind of use these on, but I would suggest instead of using an X-Acto knife or a straight blade for the medium and the EVA. You'll also want different grades of sandpaper, so that way you can go to sand your edges later, especially when you're beveling your edges. Sandpaper can be a little tricky. We use it typically on the EVA foam and on the pink foam. The pink foam is good for the sandpaper. For the EVA foam or the medium grade foam, when you're beveling your edges, the sandpaper usually gives it sort of a hairy texture because your hands aren't moving fast enough across the foam, and it'll just shred it up. So I suggest a Dremel tool with, obviously ours gets a lot of love and has foam still on it, and a drum bit on it. The Dremel goes fast enough so that way the foam doesn't become that furry weird thing, and it goes through really quick. Yeah, this will bevel your edges super fast. Something else when you're doing cutting, by the way, is to save your tables.
Oh, so actually, if you just stay in St. Louis, I'll meet you over at St. Louis.
They have little rulers on it. We don't use it. It's really more, we just use it so we don't screw up our tables. Trust me, your table will thank you. And, of course, the two last things that you'll want. One, a hot glue gun. We've used a couple hot glue guns. It really doesn't matter. We find that it's best to use one that has the high and the low temp, the multi-temps, because for some foams you'll want to use the low temp so that way it doesn't necessarily melt through the foam like the pink foam, or if you were using expanding foam or something like that. And then the high temp, again, so you can use it on like the EVA foam or the medium foam or whatever. So it's nice to have the different varieties. And then the last thing you'll need, and probably one of the most important things, like, I always assume that people have a hot glue gun around their house, and so that's not a tool that you need to invest in. A Dremel is nice but not necessary. This, however, which is a heat gun, this is extremely necessary when working with foam. This is how you're going to seal your foam and how you're going to shape your foam. So if you don't have one of these, I advise investing one of these. They can be pretty cheap. I think this one was either $10 or $20. Blow dryers don't work. You can use a flamethrower / torch on your foam, but you run into possibly burning it. An iron also works, however, you're not so much in the shaping department. And again, you'll have to be really careful to make sure you don't iron your foam onto your iron. And you can also use a stovetop, but again, then you're getting uneven spots and you're over stovetop and it's just a mess. This has two settings, a high and a low. You can use either one. It is amazing. It's really quick. I definitely advise getting one of these. So that's pretty much it for tools. We will see you next week. Hopefully I do it on Thursday for episode 3, which will be about adhesives and possibly sealing, because adhesives, there's really only 3 different kinds that we typically use, and I don't feel like there'd be enough time. Next week, though, when we do adhesives, we're going to show an example of how to use the contact cement, because there's kind of like a special little trick on how to get that to seal really well. So I will be demoing that. So yeah, we're gonna get high as a kite doing contact cement. But I will see you guys next week.